Right, well, let's take a look at what you get in the kit. 2 bags of parts and some instructions with some color photos. One bag has your connectors, some bits of wire, some knobs. You got 2 pots. Hopefully they're identified. You got 2 jacks and a foot switch. And then in the other little baggie, we've got a 9-volt battery connector. There's a pre-prepared circuit board and the components themselves, including these little sockets. So the transistors don't need to be soldered in place, they are simply installed into the sockets, and then the transistors don't get overheated by the soldering. All the other components are soldered directly. So yeah, according to the blurb, this is sort of entry level, most basic pedal you can construct. You don't need a lot of experience with this stuff. Personally, I have no experience at all with this kind of thing. I know how to solder, but that's about it. So obviously, on top of this, you will need some solder and a soldering iron. This is about as cheap as it gets with a soldering iron. This is one of those ones that uses AA batteries. So 3 AA batteries. I've used this before, it does work. So staying within the sort of budget sort of idea here, try it with that soldering iron. I've also got some insulation tape in case I need it. And then you need an enclosure. Now, I didn't buy an enclosure for a pedal. What I already have is this distortion pedal that is terrible. So I thought I'll use the case because it's already prepared to take pots and jacks and all sorts of things. But then I had another idea, staying with the idea of a budget build. I've got this box that had some drill bits in it. It's a good size, quite sort of similar in size to a pedal. It's got a handy hinge and opening clasp, so I'll just smash all this out and see if it makes a good housing. May as well recycle it. It's pretty sturdy, so I reckon you could stand on it. So yeah, without any further ado, let's put this together and see what happens. The instructions themselves, there's a parts list, so you you can check that all the correct parts have been supplied, and some information about the tools that are required. Very few wire cutters, scissors if you have no wire cutters, solder and a soldering iron, and pliers, I'm assuming, would be for the nuts that need to be tightened up on the pots, the jacks, and the switch. Then some information about the type of transistors, how the circuit works, the battery life. This is a suggested order of operations, and then there's a layout diagram for the board itself, which is quite handy. Incidentally, some of the tracks on the board need to be cut, and the board comes pre-prepared with the cuts already applied. It looks like they're done using a drill bit. So yeah, and then you've got a nice layout there with an explanation of where everything goes. One thing that I will struggle with a little bit is the resistors, because you have to identify them by their color, and unfortunately I don't have the best color vision, so that's going to be quite interesting. And then yeah, you've got the circuit and the layout inside of the enclosure. If you've purchased the enclosure with it, this kit, I wanted to keep it as cheap as possible, so it doesn't have the enclosure. So as you saw, I'm doing my own. And then at the back, there's some further information for if you want to add a DC socket and an indicator LED. So I won't be doing that for now. Might be something I decide to add later, who knows. But meantime, we'll just stick to the basics. Something else I quite like about this is that I've never seen this type of paper fastening before. It doesn't have a staple or a paper clip or anything. It's quite a clever little folded and tucked sort of paper fastening system, which is nice and environmentally friendly. So kudos for that. But yeah, let's get stuck in. I think the first thing I'm going to do here is identify these resistors, because I think I'm going to find it easier if they're identified and I can just put a bit of masking tape on them, because they're quite small, and with my poor color vision, that's quite tricky. So what I'll do is I'll label them, and then I can always take the label off, but at least I'll know what the different resistors are, because I am struggling a little to read that, see what that color combination is. I might need a magnifying glass for this. Now, I'm trying to identify these 4 resistors.
All right, yeah.
And I am, as you know...
Yeah, no, it's okay. Right, so that's... Are they the right way around?
No idea. They all end in brown. So, in conclusion, I've glued the board down a bit with some epoxy glue just to hold things together. The battery's still loose. I'll stick that in, I think, with some super glue. Tidied up some of these joints, and then put the knobs on, added the bit of information about inputs and outputs, and yeah, it works. I was quite surprised by how untidy the board turned out. I mean, I always thought I wasn't terrible at soldering, but it came out a bit rubbish. A lot had to do with the soldering iron I was using. Honestly, this type I might do in a pinch for simple wire to wire soldering when you're trying to fix your speakers in your car or something, but it's no good for this stuff. It just doesn't have enough heat in it. Ended up reverting to my mains powered one, which was a hell of a lot better. Also, despite my best efforts, I did manage to short out some of the tracks on the board, which they do warn you about in the instructions. It's very easy to do. It was difficult to fix with this soldering iron, because the minute you get a little bit of blobbing, it's not man enough to melt the solder. So, you know, the volume of solder becomes too high, it'll take too long. Better to move on to the bigger soldering iron for that sort of thing. But yeah, I resorted to a hacksaw blade to make sure that some of the traces that were quite blobby, the tracks, you know, to clear them out, make sure they were clean. But other than that, these are opposite way around to the pictures in the instructions, obviously, because I've mounted them on the other side, so I had to remember which one was which. And I made one error down here, the little green wire for the ground, I put in the wrong one, so nothing worked until I fixed that. But it works. Very rewarding project, lots of fun, not difficult to do at all, and in the end you have something to play with. You have a new toy, and it was inexpensive, and it's definitely not the last time I'll be doing a pedal. I'll have a look out for some more interesting pedals to have a go at. Definitely in future, definitely do another one. At the end of the day, there's the satisfaction of building something yourself. And you know, just if you've got a little bit of experience with soldering, and you're okay with working with your hands, pretty easy to do. So loads of fun. Definitely buy another one.